Max stumbled off the teleportation pad, nearly landing face first into a hovering T-drone, which beeped in mild indignation at the human's lack of spatial awareness. Sorry, he said, waving a hand as if that would somehow fix the laws of physics, which apparently worked differently here. The drone buzzed in a low, unimpressed hum, pivoting to continue its errand of delivering steaming cups to the palace staff. Max stood, brushing imaginary dust off his uniform, and looked around at the Althurian palace, a floating fortress suspended in the violet clouds of Vera. It was the sort of palace that made him wonder if gravity was just an optional suggestion here. Long spires glimmered like liquid starlight, corridors curved impossibly, and every doorway had anti-gravity fields that made his boots slide like an ice rink, except much shinier. Lyra appeared at the end of the corridor before he could even catch his balance. She moved with a grace that seemed to bend the very air around her. Her long ears tilted sharply, betraying amusement and suspicion at the same time. "You are the human?" she asked, voice smooth, yet laced with the faintest trace of humor that Max could swear was a warning. "Yes," Max said, attempting a confident bow that ended with him spinning too far on the zero-friction floor and bumping into a floating holographic menu for the palace cafeteria. "Human, reporting for duty," he added, trying to salvage dignity from a display that now projected glazed Nebulan donuts special today, in bright, unhelpful colors. Lyra's ears twitched. The twitch was subtle, but Max felt certain it meant she was suppressing a laugh. "Your coordination is interesting," she said, stepping closer. Her voice carried a melody of authority that made Max suddenly aware of how inadequate his human muscles felt. He considered mentioning the donuts but thought better of it. Max cleared his throat. "I'm very good at protecting people," he said, standing straighter even though his boots threatened to slide him into the nearest wall. "I've been trained. I've watched every action movie ever made. I read some books too." Lyra's lips curved just slightly, which Max interpreted as either amusement or the start of a polite warning. Watching moving images does not prepare one for the subtleties of interstellar diplomacy, nor the unpredictability of an alien palace. She gestured down the corridor. "Follow me, your first assignment begins immediately." Max followed, gliding in awkward jerks as the anti-gravity fields tugged him sideways more than forward. They entered a room filled with floating holographic screens projecting diplomatic communications from dozens of star systems. Max squinted at the flood of light and alien symbols. Do I press something, or are these like magic space emails?" "They are called neural comms," Lyra said. "Touching them without authorization is inadvisable." She smirked faintly, ears flicking, "Though I suspect you might do so anyway." Max, of course, immediately did so anyway. A hologram fizzled, then expanded, showing a full report of a misfiring starcruiser that had accidentally destroyed a cargo shipment of luminescent crystals somewhere in the Andros sector. "Oh, my bad," Max said, waving vaguely. Lyra's lips twitched in what he finally realized was actual laughter, though she quickly composed herself. "We'll call it a learning experience." Their first patrol took them to the observation balcony, which extended far beyond the palace walls. Planets and moons glimmered below like scattered jewels in a cosmic bowl. Max leaned over the railing and immediately toppled slightly, catching himself just in time on the nearest energy rail. "This is amazing," he said, voice a little too loud, startling a passing maintenance drone. "But also terrifying. I think I'd get motion sickness in space." Lyra's ears flicked. "Your species' balance is fragile. You will adapt or you will embarrass yourself repeatedly, and you already have." She gave him a pointed glance and Max grinned sheepishly, holding up his hands. "I call that style," he said, grace under interstellar pressure. She didn't respond, but the twitch of her ear suggested she found the attempt at humor mildly tolerable. Their first skirmish with palace security protocols happened when Max attempted to assist a hovering janitor bot that had lost its navigation path. Max reached out, thinking he could physically guide it. Instead, the bot spun in dizzying circles, spraying cleaning fluid like a tiny fountain. Max slipped on the anti-gravity floor, flailing in slow motion, and narrowly avoided colliding with Lyra, who used her telekinetic focus to steady him midair. "Do not touch anything," she said, her tone sharp but sprinkled with the faintest amusement. "Especially if it moves and has a battery." Got it, Max said, no touching moving objects check. Then he immediately tripped over a small energy conduit, causing sparks to fly. Lyra sighed, one hand lifting to adjust the minor discharge with a flick of her long fingers. You are persistent, she said, the words betraying a tiny grin. By the time they reached the palace archives, Max had managed to launch 3 holographic menus, topple a small grav lamp, and get stuck in a minor security beam loop that played a human panic scream, recording every time he stepped on the wrong panel. Lyra shook her head, her long ears brushing lightly against the archive console. I did not anticipate this level of chaos, she said. You may survive by luck alone. Max, untangling himself from the loop, said, Luck is my specialty. I also have snacks, want a snack? Lyra stared at him blankly for a moment, then flicked her wrist, opening a protective shield around her, clearly thinking, do I humor this human or allow him to make a complete spectacle? Max interpreted the silence as a yes and fumbled out a package of compressed nutrient bars. Space candy, he declared, holding one out. Lyra sighed and took it. You are absurd, she said, and yet I feel slightly safer. Max beamed. I call that a win-win, protecting a princess, eating space candy. It's a regular Tuesday for me. The rest of the day passed in a blur of minor catastrophes and accidental heroics. Max blocked a runaway hover cart with his body, while making a dramatic quip about the importance of human cushioning, and narrowly prevented a diplomatic disaster when he misread a holographic protocol, accidentally bowing to a minor robotic dignitary instead of the visiting ambassador. Lyra laughed openly this time, the sound light and musical. She leaned slightly toward him and said, You are a human of remarkable ineptitude, and yet somehow I think you may be necessary. Max puffed up, chest swelling with pride. Necessary is my middle name, he said. Well, actually it's Mark, but in space necessary works better. By the time evening arrived, the palace hummed with whispers about the human who caused chaos wherever he went, and Lyra realized that the coming days would be complicated. Max had proven himself useless in the ways most palace officials measured usefulness, but terrifyingly effective in ways they could not anticipate. She found herself almost looking forward to the next disaster he would inevitably create. Max, meanwhile, sat cross-legged on the anti-gravity balcony, dangling his feet into empty space and munching on another nutrient bar. You know, he said, grinning at Lyra, who hovered a few meters away, arms crossed, I think chaos is underrated. It builds character, or at least, that's what my mom always said. Lyra's ears twitched, a soft laugh escaping despite her best efforts at regal composure. You will ruin the palace someday, she said. But perhaps that day is not today. For now, human, you may remain. Max raised his nutrient bar in a mock salute. Then it's settled, we're partners, or co-conspirators in organized mayhem. And somewhere deep in the palace AI's monitoring core, a small alert flashed. Human bodyguard detected. Probability of chaos, 98.7%. Max grinned, I call that job security. Lyra's ears flicked as Max stumbled across the shuttle bay, nearly colliding with a hovering cargo crate that emitted a low, offended hum. Human, she began, but Max had already tripped, bounced off the crate like a poorly thrown meteor, and landed atop a maintenance drone, which immediately beeped in existential panic. Sorry, I am not used to floating floors, Max declared, rolling off the drone with as much dignity as a flailing astronaut could muster. Lyra pinched the bridge of her nose, ears twitching in that involuntary way that meant amusement had won over irritation. They were headed to the moon of Cerulin, a gray, jagged satellite orbiting the gas giant Tyles, where rogue mercenary factions had been disrupting interstellar trade routes. The shuttle's hull shimmered as anti-grav thrusters engaged, and Max clutched his seat straps as though they were a lifeline to sanity. So, these mercenaries, they're like pirates, right? Pew space pirates. He asked, glancing at the starfield stretching infinitely outside the viewport. Correct, Lyra said, her voice calm, though her ears twitched in subtle warning. But they are organized, well-equipped, and not to be underestimated. They do not respond well to jokes. Max raised one eyebrow. They do, I was planning on opening with a classic human pun. Lyra ignored him, but he could feel her eyes following every twitch of his fingers, which he nervously drummed against the console. This mission is not a social visit, she said. Your primary duty is to ensure my safety. Yes, ma'am, Max said, saluting awkwardly and nearly knocking over a stack of energy rations. I am the ultimate protector of royalty. Expert in everything, really. The shuttle landed with a soft hum, the anti-grav pads making the craft hover just above the jagged surface. Max bounced lightly with each step, his boots sliding against the moon's minimal gravity. Okay, step 1, locate threats. Step 2, heroic rescue. Step 3, profit. He whispered. Lyra's long ears swiveled toward him. Profit is not a consideration, she said. Survival is. Their first encounter with trouble came swiftly. A squad of mercenary drones, each armed with plasma disruptors, appeared around the ridge. Max yelped, almost leaping off the cliff, while Lyra's ears flared in irritation and excitement. Do not panic, she muttered, and then with a subtle flick of her fingers, a force pulse lifted rocks into the air, hurling them toward the drones. Max clapped his hands. Oh wow, that's like telekinesis. Neat trick, princess, very dramatic. One drone ricocheted off a hovering boulder and crashed into another, causing a chain reaction of sparks and tumbling metal. Max, eager to help, grabbed a nearby energy net and flung it wildly, only tangling himself in the fibers. A little help here, he shouted, swinging upside down like a very confused spider. Lyra groaned, but with a deft movement of her wrist and a low hum, the net lifted, trapping the remaining drones. Max untangled himself, brushing cosmic dust off his uniform. I call that improvisational strategy. They moved cautiously toward the mercenary encampment, Max attempting to mimic Lyra's silent, efficient movements. It didn't work. He tripped over a low-energy barrier, accidentally activating a holographic beacon that projected the message. Space Alliance intruder, seriously clumsy human detected. Lyra's ears twitched in irritation, then a barely perceptible smile curved her lips. You are entirely predictable, she said. Max beamed. Predictably excellent, I hope. The encampment itself was a labyrinth of floating platforms and hovering supply crates. Max tried to scan for threats, pressing buttons he didn't understand, accidentally opening a gate that released a dozen mining bots programmed to defend their territory. Friendly bots? Max offered, raising his hands. One bot swung a mechanical arm at him. Max jumped back and landed on another bot, sending both spinning in low gravity. Lyra shook her head, ears flicking in that combination of disbelief and faint delight that made him feel strangely proud. When the mercenary leader finally appeared, Max's first instinct was to wave. Hello, human here. Not to fight unless required? Lyra's eyes narrowed. Her ears bristled and she stepped between Max and the leader, projecting a shimmering force field. You underestimate me at your peril, she said, her tone cold but musical. Max muttered, I can project musical peril too if needed, and hit a random console, causing a nearby hovering drone to emit a high-pitched alarm. Lyra's ears twitched in exasperation. Focus, human, she said. Negotiation began awkwardly. Max tried to contribute with human charm, which mostly involved bad jokes about cosmic taxes and space dental hygiene. Lyra winced but could not entirely suppress a chuckle as the mercenary leader shook his head in confusion. She handled the serious threats with elegance and precision, moving through psychic pulses, energy barriers, and carefully calibrated telekinesis, while Max's antics caused more confusion than harm. Yet somehow the confusion worked in their favor. The mercenary leader, unsure if they were brilliant or completely insane, agreed to stand down. On the shuttle ride home, Max flopped into a seat. So, we're heroes now, right? Galactic fame, medals, possibly a parade? Lyra's ears twitched as she folded her arms. You have not yet learned the value of subtlety. Subtlety, Max said, is that like quiet chaos because I'm amazing at chaos? Lyra sighed, a faint smile tugging at her lips. You are infuriatingly effective. She looked out the viewport at the stars streaking past. The galaxy is unpredictable, human. You are an unpredictable element. Max grinned, opening a small energy bar. Unpredictable is my specialty. Want one? Lyra shook her head, ears twitching in amused denial. Do you always eat at such critical moments? She asked. Always, Max said, biting into it. Keeps the chaos fueled. Lyra's ears flicked in emotion, almost like a laugh. Perhaps the universe needs your type of chaos, she said softly. Max looked at her, grinning, unaware if she was joking or serious. By the time the shuttle docked at Althurian Palace, both were exhausted, but a strange camaraderie had begun to form. Max had nearly destroyed a diplomatic mission, saved a few lives through accidental heroics, and made an enemy mercenary fleet reconsider their career choices. Lyra had witnessed human persistence in action and, despite herself, found it intriguing. As they stepped onto the balcony overlooking the palace gardens, Max looked at the stars and said, "You know, Princess, if every mission is like this, I think we're going to need more energy bars and possibly a bigger shuttle." Lyra's ears twitched, one curling slightly as if in amusement. "You will be the death of me," she said, "but perhaps that is not entirely undesirable." Max raised his energy bar in a mock salute, then it settled. Chaos and protection hand in hand, space heroes reporting for duty. Lyra's eyes softened as she watched him, shaking her head in disbelief and faint delight. "You are impossible," she said, her long ears brushing lightly against the air as they swayed with the shuttle's gravity adjustment. And somewhere in the palace monitoring systems, a small alert blinked. Human bodyguard survival probability decreasing slightly. Chaos index increasing exponentially. Max grinned. "I call that progress." The palace glittered in the violet starlight, every spire and corridor humming with energy as if anticipating the chaos that seemed to follow Max wherever he went. Lyra's ears twitched sharply, scanning the balcony for anomalies, but the subtle smile tugging at her lips betrayed that she was not entirely displeased with the human at her side. Max leaned over the railing, dangling his legs in zero gravity, waving a small energy bar at her. "So, Princess, any chance of a quiet evening tonight?" Lyra's ears twitched, one flicking toward him in warning. "Quiet does not exist in Althurian," she said, "and you, human, are the living embodiment of chaos." Max grinned. "I prefer the term dynamic problem solver." The first sign of trouble was subtle, a barely perceptible shift in the palace's gravity stabilizers, followed by the faint hum of an unauthorized drone skimming through the upper corridors. Max tensed, scanning the air like a soldier in a holovid while Lyra's long ears swiveled to the sound. "Someone is testing our defenses," she murmured. Max grabbed her arm. "Do we fight? Do we negotiate? Do we snack first?" Lyra gave a short, humorless laugh. "We fight, and perhaps you may snack later." They moved through the halls, Max cautiously imitating Lyra's controlled movements, which still resulted in him tripping over a maintenance conduit, knocking over a floating vase. Lyra rolled her eyes, but for the first time she didn't scold him. Instead, she projected a protective energy shield around both of them with a flick of her fingers, deflecting the shards as Max scrambled upright, brushing himself off. "See, efficiency and chaos working together," he said proudly. The threat revealed itself in the grand atrium, an assassin drone, cloaked in stealth fields, with plasma-tipped appendages aimed at the throne where Lyra usually sat. Max froze for a moment, eyes wide, then charged, yelling, "Not on my watch!" His timing was catastrophic but effective. The drone misfired while dodging him, spinning into a levitating fountain, short-circuiting spectacularly. Lyra, ears twitching in exasperated amusement, lifted the last functional shield with a flick and disarmed the remaining drones with a precision that made Max feel simultaneously impressed and entirely unnecessary. Once the danger passed, Max collapsed onto a floating bench, still panting. "Okay, that was intense, also messy, and kind of fun. Did we just save the palace?" Lyra's ears twitched. "Yes, and you almost destroyed it in the process. But surprisingly, you contributed." Max grinned. "See, chaos and heroics, perfect combo." As the palace staff emerged from their hiding places, whispering about the human who had both saved and endangered them, Lyra approached Max. "You have changed," she said softly, ears flicking in a thoughtful rhythm. "At first, I believed your incompetence would make this mission a disaster, yet your persistence, your unorthodox methods have proven useful. I underestimated the value of unpredictability." Max tilted his head, pretending to consider the weight of her words. "So, you're saying my weirdness actually helped?" Lyra's lips curved slightly. "Yes, in ways you could not have foreseen." Max beamed. "Good, because I was worried you might make me eat space rations forever as punishment." She let out a faint laugh, ears quivering. "You will receive no such punishment. Instead, you may continue to be infuriatingly necessary." Later, in the palace gardens, Max watched the floating bioluminescent flora sway gently in zero-gravity currents. He had learned to navigate without tripping mostly. He had learned, through repeated disaster and careful guidance, that his impulsive humor and chaotic instincts could, in fact, have strategic value when paired with someone like Lyra. She had taught him patience, discipline, and the subtle art of observing before acting. Lyra appeared beside him, her long ears brushing lightly against the shimmering energy currents above the flowers. "You have grown," she said quietly, and for the first time Max saw her vulnerability, the weight of responsibility behind her otherwise confident demeanor. Not just in skill, but in understanding. "You see things differently, human, and sometimes that vision is necessary." Max grinned, nudging her gently. "And you've grown too, princess. You've learned that chaos has its merits, that sometimes the unexpected saves the day." She let a faint smile play at her lips, ears twitching in that subtle rhythm that told Max she was actually enjoying his commentary. "Perhaps, but do not mistake this for permission to be careless." Max saluted, nearly losing his balance on a floating path, then righted himself with exaggerated flair. Noted, careful chaos coming right up. The palace returned to normal, or as normal as it could be with a human bodyguard who treated anti-gravity corridors like a slapstick stage and a princess whose long ears twitched at every misstep. The diplomatic relations that had been threatened by mercenary attacks stabilized, thanks in part to Max's unpredictable heroics, Lyra's precise interventions, and their combined improvisation that no one could have anticipated. Rumors swirled, but this time with admiration, the human bodyguard who somehow survived and thrived alongside the alien princess. Max opened another energy bar, offering one to Lyra with a grin. "We did good, huh?" Lyra took it, ears twitching in reluctant amusement. "Yes, we did good, perhaps more than good. We worked together and I have learned something important." "What's that?" Max asked, chewing thoughtfully. "That even in the strictest order, a little unpredictability can be an advantage," she said, and for a moment her expression softened entirely, free of